with that being said, we look over to a team that had its road bumps,
It did.
but was able to avenge a prior season loss to the Atlanta Dream. So no nightmares for the Storm in that one. How are we doing storm-wise? What's going on over there at Climate Pledge?
A close loss on the road at the Chicago Sky, 78-74. Our player of the game was Joel Lloyd, 18 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals. On the 22nd, they traveled to Phoenix, and that was, unfortunately, another loss. They just kind of they lost it there towards the end of the game and just couldn't really recover. And Skylar Diggins went off, and Diana Taurasi went off. So, yeah, that was a loss, 94-78. Our player of the game was Brianna Stewart, 22 points, 14 rebounds, and 2 steals. And a win. A win at Climate Pledge on the 24th versus the Atlanta Dream, who they, as you mentioned, had lost to prior in the season. That was a 10-point win, 82-72. Our player of the game was Tina Charles, who I think is our player of the game for the first time.
Yeah, that's kind of weird to say, I guess.
Isn't it? She had 27 points, 15 rebounds, 4 blocks, was plus 27 on the court. And Charles became the 4th player to score 7,000 points in WNBA history. First player with 7,000 points and 3,500 rebounds. So milestone for her. And that 7,000 point came on a 3. Which
so I've got something to ask you. I've been curious about this because we've been having you kind of primarily take the Storm, right? So one, it is cool. I like that you acknowledged that it was on the 3 because I think it was discussed in the presser that she didn't really take threes to begin her career.
No.
Obviously, that's an element to that game and the way that the game of basketball as a whole has kind of evolved. But so I know that you in your article have mentioned that Ezzy has been taking the bench seat and China's been starting these last 2 games. At least from what you have seen, why do you think that is? And what are you thinking? Obviously, this game is great. I know she got a double-double down in Phoenix. But what are your thoughts? I'm just curious about your thoughts on that because obviously we talked about it, how this could be a breakout year for Ezzy. She's been playing really solidly. What have you seen in that regard in the 2 centers that we've got currently active on the roster?
Did make
2 of the 3.
Yeah,
sorry.
2 of the 3.
Chantel, I'm sorry.
It did make me kind of sad. I wondered if that first game that she started was the turning point of that transition of Tina becoming a starter. But I thought it was working well. I thought she was doing great coming off the bench. I thought her contribution was still good to the team. And then she goes and, does what she did on Sunday as a starter. But I don't want to see Ezzy's contribution go down any. And it looks like the minutes are being shared pretty okay. So I don't know. Coach Quinn said that against that loss to Phoenix, that Ezzy was in a bit of foul trouble. I didn't quite notice it during the game. She had 3 fouls. I mean, you still have a couple fouls to give. Yeah. It's not, pull out of the game yet. But I'm curious I was going to say as the season continues, but we're also coming to an end here. So I don't want to see Ezzy's contribution go down. So that's the part that does concern me. I don't want to see her lose her footing coming off the bench.
And I mean, at least like on paper, right? You look at it either way, whether you have Tina on the bench or Ezzy on the bench, having either one of those players on the bench is a luxury, I feel like. And as we talk about, right, any good basketball team is going to need that bench, especially if you're going deep in the playoffs. And, whether it's matchups wise, I mean, Ezzy, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I don't know if she's gone down in it, but she was for a good amount of the time leading the leagues in blocks per game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a great rim protector, somebody who has hit a couple of threes here and there,
She has.
But I was just curious about that, at least from your perspective, considering that that's been, so, and obviously there's a lot of weight on that decision, considering what you're playing for, who's on your team. I know Tina hasn't said it's her last year, but she's talked about it, so she's winding down.
Yeah,
it's Breon's last year. It's obviously Sue Bird's last year. So there's a lot of players who want to go out with another title this year. So there's a lot of weight, I feel like, in all these decisions, especially if you're Coach Quinn.
Yeah, and she is playing around with lost the word. With the roster, she did have Brianna, Ezzy, and Tina in at one point, and that was interesting to see.
That's a big lineup.
Yeah. So, And they also played a
Wow.
lot more zone defense,
Mm-hmm.
which they haven't always done. And Coach Quinn did acknowledge that the Dream like to play ISO. And so they wanted to change
Gotcha.
their approach to the game. But continuing to be curious to see what she does.
Well, and then I think you talking about the Dream doing a lot of iso ball, being able to play a zone well after playing a man well, it's a lot of versatility. I know I looked at it in that game because Bel was at the game against the Dream. I was not, but just looking at it stats wise and hearing about the zone, we look at that starting five. Sue's, she may be playing her last year, but she's got a great IQ basketball wise. Drew Lloyd, great defender. One of the probably should have. I don't know how high she got on defensive team last year, but had a great year defensively. Has a great IQ as well. Stewie has great length. Tina, great 14 defensive rebounds is ridiculous to see. Ezzy is a great shot blocker. Tina and Stewie had great blocks in this last game, right?
Yes, they
so and then Brianna January is a great perimeter guard. You've got a lot of defensive flexibility. Gabby Williams. We don't even need to talk about Gabby Williams. So it's to me that's incredible to see the versatility. And then you've got the bench. It's just sometimes you've got to really put this all together. Obviously, the loss at Chicago, defending champs. I get it. Phoenix. SDS, Deanna Taurasi. I'm sure Deanna Taurasi got up for that game because of what it was, right?
Yeah, and Coach Quinn also made sure to mention that there were thousands of fans there, and that she felt like that kind of shifted the momentum once Phoenix did go up.
Yeah. So I did want to touch on that though. I thought that was really interesting to look at. So,
Moving on to some injury news here. Mercedes Russell, we actually have a little bit more clarity in regard to her. She had a procedure on July 19th to treat recurrent low pressure headaches. She's out for the remainder of the regular season. However, again, regular season, Coach Quinn was hopeful that she could return and give the team some help in the playoffs. So moving on to some team notes here. In case you missed it, the final regular season game versus the Las Vegas Aces on August 7th is sold out. That's 18,000 fans that will be at Climate Pledge for Sue Bird's final regular season game. So if you didn't get a chance to snag some tickets, unfortunately, you can't anymore.
Unless you want to pay resale prices.
Oh, yeah. And those are a bit crazy right now. So
doesn't mean you can't go and see that game next Wednesday, though, right? On the 3rd,
yeah.
Second to last.
Yeah.
Or if you want to wait for playoff tickets. I'm sure those might be
paying for those,
buco bucks too. So,
The team currently sits at a record of 18-10. Of course, we discussed no Commissioner's Cup as the other teams will be playing for that. Looking ahead, they play the Connecticut. They're on the road for the next 3 games. They play the Connecticut Sun on the 28th. That's a 4 p.m. start. On the 30th at the Washington Mystics, that's an early start, 9 a.m. And then on the 31st, again, the Washington Mystics with a 12 p.m. start. That about wraps us up